Based on continual conflicts with the Maya, harsh climate and famine, and the decimation of populations due to the spread of disease, in the northwestern corridor, the Spaniards made little attempt to Hispanize and or Christianize the Maya in the years immediately after settlement. With the Spanish huddled into a few urban centers and the church represented by only a few friars, the Maya were tasked with the responsibility of implementing Spanish law, interpreting Christianity, and governing their own people. For at least a generation or more, during the period of conquest and pacification, Spanish settlers made little attempt to communicate religion and or law with the Maya. Between 1542 and approximately the mid-1950s, the occupied site of the Ciudadela was predominantly based on religious performances, specifically of the Roman Catholic Church. Although in the later occupation, beginning in 1751 through about 1788, a Spanish military fort was built around it, which is the namesake for the site, which is Ciudadela. Ciudadela in English means citadel or fort. The majority of the reasons for this occupation at this site were for religious purposes. As previously mentioned, the importance of the Ciudadela structure and the information collected from this particular project stems from the fact that the Ciudadela today no longer exists and has been destroyed in modern times. The last remaining vestige of this structure actually was dated to 1973. However, some have claimed that there are elements of this once grand structure incorporated into the modern buildings that you see today. In addition to the fact that this site has been destroyed in modern times, as previously mentioned earlier in this presentation, Tíhoo is recognized as an understudied Type 1 archaeological site, due mainly to the fact of its demolishment in modern times. However, the particular collection that was excavated by John Goggin in the 1950s has never been studied, cataloged, or analyzed prior to the research project that I undertook. In addition, as a result of the fact that there has been the absence of structures at this site, very few studies outside of the salvage archaeological projects mentioned before have included any information about the site of Tíhoo. So, in sum, one of the main reasons why this site is of particular interest is the fact that it is going to provide information and details about a site that has been very infrequently studied and a collection that has never been formally studied before. In sum, as we revisit the original project research question, which I might remind you stated, how did pre-Columbian and historic exchange impact Maya material culture in Tíhoo, Mérida, Yucatán? Well, the data indicates that there was little change in the production of indigenous pottery after the fall of Mayapan, circa AD 1441 to 61, through to the Spanish historic period, AD 1542 to present. However, it appears that non-ceramic items drastically changed in the post-contact period. Mayapan wares, which are specifically representative of the pre-Columbian capital occupied by the Shu, constituted the largest type of ceramics located, with red wares being 1,972 and unslipped wares being 1,632, which was 40% of the entire collection. This indicates a strong presence of the Shu lineage that had once occupied Mayapan and had moved to Tíhoo after the demise and fall of Mayapan in the earlier years. Additionally, in the colonial era, changes in ceramics were recorded as native inhabitants and Spaniards incorporated more imported and foreign ceramic types into their society, which drastic changes of ceramic items were more easily noticeable. Ceramic changes were less, although there was a diversification of ceramics which included the incorporation of Spanish, Italian, English, German, Hollanders, and porcelains from China and Japan. Refined earthenwares in Mallorca constituted the largest majority of import goods from the European and Asiatic origins. However, it appears that there was a large reliance still on Mayan-made indigenous pottery. As previously mentioned, non-ceramic mains, which was 99% of the collection, which totaled at 1,942, were indicative of European origins, which illustrated a point that the people who were occupying both the colonial and historic site of the Ciudadela, although they brought in non-ceramic material items to support their cultural living abilities, they relied heavily on the Mayan for their indigenous ceramic remains. Overall, the material assemblage of the Ciudadela collection is very distinct, yet it simultaneously represents the history of both the colonized and colonizers. Much of the diversity in the assemblage represents the political, economic, socio-religious, and socio-cultural developments in Spain, the Yucatán, and Greater Mexico occurring at this time. Events such as the conquest of the Yucatán, the conquistadors' interaction with the Spanish Church, and the occupation of this site by the Franciscans, the Mayans, and the later Spanish military fort, illustrate the resilience of the pre-Columbian historic Maya, and the growing influence of the European invaders and their expansion into the peninsula. This altogether represents a very complex exchange of social and daily values that the natives and the Spaniards were forced to encounter. The interaction between groups, their histories, and the material goods they used and produced characterize the historic and current cultural patterns in the region as well. The interdisciplinary nature of this project, as indicated by this presentation, I hope illustrates the need and importance of using works that combine both the history and archaeology of the region. This study, I believe, will contribute to a better understanding of the overall exchanges that have gone on not only in the past, but are currently going on in the future. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that this information has provided you with some insights into the archaeological and historical site of Tíhoo, Mérida, Yucatán.